First of all, thanks for your presentation. In the line of the ash tieback, could you give me your view or your thinking on this new RUS scheme that's coming out, or have you any part to play in it? I just note, and I'd like a comment on this, in the last 4 weeks we're getting this lovely dashboard from the department of every week what licences are issued, and I note that Coillte have got 180 licences. Can you confirm that that is all for commercial heavy cutting, or is some of that for thinning on that situation? In relation to the appeals, how many cubic metres is tied up at the moment? And in relation to, there's one other thing, and I'm bringing it in here because I'm going to be brief. A lot of speakers have to speak. In relation to the partnerships where people would be looking to cut timber at the moment as well, it is disappointing that Coillte, instead of going to courts or going down a legal route, hasn't gone and sat down with the people, because it will end up that lawyers and barristers will have more out of it than anybody else. Why haven't you tried to resolve that? And can you confirm that all your applications now, that you have to accompany an NIS, which is actually being disputed now, I believe, at the moment? Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. So I'll take the broad questions in relation to licensing. I'll ask Mr. Carlin to take the questions in relation to ash, in relation to the farm partnership as well, and anything else, Mr. Carlin, in the round. Just in overall terms, the situation for us is that we have 16% of the timber that we need licensed for next year, and we do need that 2.3 million licensed by the end of the year in order to carry on our operations in what we would consider, in a normal way, and that does require a tripling of the licensing the licenses that are being issued by the department. I do see resources as being a very, very critical part of achieving this. In terms of the question as to whether further legislation, right now we are in a very acute stage of this crisis. We have very little timber remaining for this year. And having been through the legislative change and following it very closely in terms of the recent amendment bill, to be frank, there isn't time in terms of legislation right now. What we need is licensed timber. And in order to achieve that, I think we have to focus on the current process. And I can only comment from the outside, but based on the volume of licenses that we are getting, we do see that in order to triple it, that resources are needed. I would say in time, I do believe that in order to have a vibrant forestry sector going forward, that a regulatory review is necessary, and perhaps in time that may result in the need for legislative change. In terms of, I'll make an overall comment in terms of the dashboard and the licenses. So the licenses that we've had in the last number of weeks are licenses for commercial timber. They now need to work through the 28-day period before those licenses would be available as such. And they remain, with our system that they can, of course, be appealed. In terms of the level of appeals, we have 700,000 metres cubed of timber tied up at the moment in the FAC, and that is why in my opening statement I also made reference to the importance of the FAC hearing appeals, at a pace that is needed. And from Coilte's point of view, at this stage, we have to be realistic in terms of where we are at. We have 54 appeals listed for the month of November. We have 24 listed for the month of December. We have 223 overall appeals that need to work through the system at the moment. Ideally, we need those appeals heard this quarter to help to keep volume to our customers and to help to keep work to contractors. We have to be realistic now and recognise where we are. But what we need is the backlog of appeals heard to free up that 700,000 metres cubed And we believe that in order to do that, it needs to get done by the end of January. And that will again require a very significant uplift, almost tripling what we are currently experiencing. And long term, what the industry needs is a turnaround timeframe of some certainty. And I would suggest, and we would suggest, that a 2-month timeframe is what we would consider to be reasonable and that we could all plan for. In terms of Quail to Nature, what I would say in terms of that, so Quail to Nature is one important vehicle that we have in Quailta. It's our not-for-profit. It is very focused on projects to restore and rehabilitate parts of our estate, and will also look at creating new forests. But Quail to Nature will be one part of that. But we are very keen in Quailta and recognising the ambitions of the state, and rightly the 8,000 hectares that are needed so much for climate change, is that we play our part not just in Quail to Nature but across the broader Quailta, to business as such. And I'll just pass over to Mr. Carlin now to take the other questions in the round. Thank you.
Okay, I might start with the questions on ash, and again just take them in the round. So a question on a scientific appraisal and a little bit of background in what we're trying to do to restore ash. We've identified 200 clones from around Europe, and actually 3 of those provenances are from Ireland. Those have been planted out in Castlemorris in Kilkenny. There's 600 clones planted there now. They were planted in April this year. And the reason we chose that site is because that's a hotspot, unfortunately, for ash dieback. So it's a very good testing ground for these provenances. Early indications are very positive. It still is very early, but usually ash dieback does impact on juvenile trees. So far it's very, very positive. We will continue then to increase this clonal bank with a view to plant many more of those clones. We will then try to develop seed orchards from this and get back into planting ash broadly in our forests again. So I think it's positive. It's extremely important species for not only for Quailta but for society, particularly with from a hurley ash point of view. So it's extremely important from a biodiversity and social point of view that we can get back planting ash again, and that's what we're striving towards. On the scheme itself, the scheme isn't relevant to Quailta, but I am aware of it. I suppose it's relevant more from our farm partners than it is on our own estate. What we do on our own estate is that we've cleared out about 60% of our ash on our estate is impacted. So we've cleared out the worst impacted sites, and on the less impacted sites we're carrying out heavy thinning, because ash responds well to heavy thinning, and it seems to slow down the rate of spread. The scheme itself, I think, my understanding is it's a better scheme than before. It does look at the extent of damage and tries to apply the right mitigation dependent on the level of damage. So I think that's the right approach to take, rather than just clearing everything out. It's more nuanced than that. So I think that I would have hoped that the scheme will be more, I suppose, relevant to what we need to try to do. With regard farm partners, there were a couple of questions. One was on trying to seek resolution, and the other was on the arbitration. I suppose I might start on the resolution. We absolutely have tried very hard to resolve these before they get into arbitration. It is worth bearing in mind, just from a numbers point of view, although I can't speak about specific legal cases, what I can say is that there are 9 partners that have sought arbitration. 2 are advanced, 7 less so. We certainly are doing everything we can to get these resolved as quickly as possible, but I'm sure you'll understand that it is in a legal process, and a process that we're not in control of. We're meeting all the deadlines that we have to meet, providing all the information that we have to provide. We want to get this straightened out as much as I'm sure our partner does as well. Clearly, we'd rather not be in this position with these 9 partners. We're working with all of our partners to try to improve what were issues identified a couple of years ago, which were mainly around communications. and commercial statements. So we tried very hard recently to improve on our communications with all of our partners to avoid unnecessary arbitration that neither party wants to get involved in. I think that was it. There was one other question on felling licenses and NIS from Deputy Fitzmaurice. Just to say that all of our applications for felling, for road permits and for afforestation are screened for appropriate assessment, and any that are screened in, we are preparing a detailed ecology report and an NIS to support each of those applications, and they're being submitted to the department along with the application, and we hope that this that helps speed things along.